Welcome, everybody. This is Bob Hollis, and today we're going to pick up where we left off after our last class. I apologize for last week with the power outage. There wasn't much I could do, and I assumed that most people wouldn't have power anyway, based on what was going on all around the region. So anyway, we are powered up and ready to go, and I even thought I'd be fine because I purchased a generator after this started happening last year, but the problem was that even Comcast lost power, so they couldn't provide internet service whether I had power or not. But we are good to go for tonight. And what I'd like to do is I've talked to a number of people in the class, and it seems that some people are struggling with a few of the fundamentals that are only necessary for just the very beginning of setting up a website. So for example, installing WordPress, setting up the database, and just getting that initial site started. And I want to emphasize that I'm ready to do that for anybody who needs help with it. And it's not something that's important for you to know unless you plan on becoming a web developer, because once that's done one time, you never have to do it again. And if you do, there are ways to do it that don't even require uh, setting up the database yourself, and it's not as secure if you go with those standard type of defaults. With basically, some of the hosting systems have automated installation systems, but they work. But you don't need to worry about that either, because again, what I'm offering is that we can get together one-on-one and schedule time, and for wherever you are right now, we can get you to the next steps. And one of the things that is good to know and important for just about any website is an ability to create forms. So what I thought I'd do is I'm going to create a form right now in the class. So I'll show you how to create forms. And then in the process, the form that I create is going to be something for you to give me some basic information and then schedule some one-on-one time. And depending on where you are, if you've just got your hosting and you have a domain but nothing more, I can take it from there to making sure that when your domain is pointed to where your hosting is, WordPress is installed, and that you're ready to move forward and just start building out the site, which is technically far easier than starting from scratch and setting up the database and all the foundational types of things that we did in the first and second classes. So with that, again, feel free to submit questions anytime as well. I'm going to pop out the question panel here so I can keep an eye on that. So if you have any particular questions at any time while we're doing this, enter your question and I'll take a look and try to answer them as we go. If by chance I don't get to all of them, I'll readdress it at the end. And again, can provide some one-on-one time if it's something that pertains specifically to your site and takes some in-depth conversation, so that we don't tie up everybody, but we also spend as much time as needed on whatever issues are most pressing to you. With that said, there's a form plugin we're using here called Gravity Forms. And Gravity Forms is a pretty popular form tool in WordPress plugin. It's probably the most popular. Another one that's pretty popular is Contact Form 7, and Ninja Forms too, probably a distant third behind Gravity Forms and Contact Form 7. Today we're going to be using Gravity Forms, and I'll show you some of the really cool things you can do with it. But the first thing we'll do will be something very practical, and that is I'm going to create a form that allows you to submit all the information I would need to be able to help you with your website and get everything off the ground for you. All you would need to do is set up your register your domain, and you can do that again through GoDaddy or name silo, numerous options for registering domains. It's not as important which one you use, just the fact that you do it is what matters. And then also set up a hosting account, and that's also pretty easy, but you would need to do that because they're going to ask for your credit card and that sort of thing. And then I'm going to need the login information for both of those accounts. And so when you set them up, take whatever, they'll probably send you a password to start with or a password reset link. Set that to something temporary if you're going to send it to me. So it can be, Bob Hollis password temp 2020 exclamation point, something like that. And then when I'm done, you can change the password back to what you want to use on a long-term basis. Okay, so let's see. Are we supposed to be looking at your screen? Yes, you are. Thank you for that. Let's take a look here. Okay, so it looks like you should be able to see my screen now. I see the audience view there. Thank you, Trina. And Trina and I have spent some time together, and we made a lot of progress. And I think we're going to make a lot more over this next week. But let's start by looking at how you can create a form and some of the things you can do with them. They're very powerful tools that you can do things like surveys, you can do mathematical calculations based on input, you can do event registration, just about anything that you want with something like a gravity form. So first, when I came into plugins, I installed a plugin, and that was the Gravity Forms plugin that we're using. I'll show you that. That's right here. There are numerous settings in it that you can go through. We don't need to go through all of these right now, but you'll get to know it as you're creating forms on your own. So for right now, I'll go back to forms here. And again, in WordPress, you can do things from multiple places. So I can click new form here, or I can click add new here. It does the same thing. And I'll call this form title WordPress setup information. Okay, let's correct that. All right, and that's what I'll be asking for. So after you put your title in, you're going to see something that looks like this, and all your field options are over here. And we'll go through what each one of those do as we're working on things. But you can see that it gets pretty elaborate. For example, these are all post fields. So you can even create a form on the front end of your website that allows somebody to enter a title, body text, excerpt, tags, an image, category, even custom fields, and submit something that would come into your site as a draft post. So where that can come in handy is we have a system set up for one of my national clients where they're archiving information around recycling and sustainability, and anybody can go to that website and submit new information for the archives, and then it comes in and has to be approved before it gets posted. But it's a good way to allow the public to submit information without requiring them to have a login. Pricing fields, so you can work with say WooCommerce, e-commerce, and create options for, products would be, say, a shirt. Options might be small, medium, large, extra large, etc. And it can total up everything within the form, give a total, and then when they check out, they pay with PayPal, or use a credit card through PayPal. So if you have a PayPal account, you can do anything that you need to on the web. So let's get started with this one. What are some of the things I'd want to know? Well, first, probably a name. And for some reason, I never know why a name would be in an advanced field, but that's where they put it. So name, and like an email, and probably a phone number. And then we're going to collect information. So let's see, the first thing I'd probably want to know is the name of the hosting account. So this is a single line text. And I'm going to come in here to edit this, click here. Under the field label, I'll say hosting account login URL. And I could put a description. So please ignore my wording here. I wouldn't normally, please include probably isn't really the right way to say that, but please enter the link to log in on your domain hosting account. Now, for any of you who might use GoDaddy, I'm a registered GoDaddy Pro. So even though I'm going to be asking you for your username and your password for this, you can, if you are using GoDaddy, I can give you my email address that I use for my GoDaddy account, and you can just add me as an authorized admin. And that way you don't ever have to give me your password. you can just add me as a person who has access to make domain changes. Then that would give me the ability to point your domain to your hosting account, wherever that might be. So this, and I'll send you that if you'd like. Hosting account, login URL, and then I'm going to need hosting account username. And we can put spacers between these two. So let's say I wanted to do a section for hosting account, username, and then again, here's password. And remember, I'm going to even title this temporary password for Bob, because you should never give anybody your password. Even my server companies, I mean, obviously I need to have some level of trust because they can probably root in from the back end on the server, but you don't want to do that if you don't have to. It just doesn't make sense. And I don't like to ask people for passwords. So this is the reason to use a temporary password for Bob. Okay, your username you usually can't change. So that's fine. Just use a temporary password that you give me. And then once we're done working, you can change the password back to so that I don't have it anymore. Okay, now suppose I wanted to add a section break between these. I can do that too. So I can slide in this little section item, and I can call this hosting information. Domain, actually. Domain registration info. All right, and then after this, and every once in a while I like to update just in case I crash or you lose a page or something like that. So after domain registration info, the next thing I'm going to need is web hosting account info. So that's what we'll do here. So under this section break, and this is all being recorded, by the way. If any of you are frantically taking notes, you don't need to. If you like, go ahead. But we also have out here on our class site, I've been putting up the recordings. So there's session 1 and there's session 2. And I'll add session 3, of course, we missed because of the outage. And that's what we're doing today. So I'll add that as well. And all of the rest as they occur. So here, instead of section break, we'll call this website hosting account. All right. And this would be, say, for example, Green Geeks, HostGator. There are numerous out there. I'm just going to put etc. I've generally had a good experience with HostGator, or with Green Geeks rather. In fact, I'm just going to change HostGator to ISO because my experience with HostGator has not been as pleasant. ISO is a completely solar-based hosting system down in Southern California, and they've been great too. So now we have our second section here, and again, it's going to be the same thing. I need a username, the URL, username, and password. So rather than retyping those, I can duplicate this. So you can see I've got that one, and then this, they're numbered, so I know which one was created first. I can pull that down here. And username, duplicate that and put that below it. And password, duplicate that and pull that down. Okay, and then the next thing I would probably want to know is when is a good time to schedule one-on-one time with you. So in this case, I'm going to again create a new section. And I'll just call this best time and days to meet. And here we can put in some paragraph text. There are also other fields such as dates, but I'd like to leave this more open so people can type in Monday before 10, Tuesday after 4, Saturday mornings are best, whatever it might be, and not restrict to something like that. So in this case, I'm going to put paragraph text. So here under standard fields, I can choose paragraph text and say, please enter days and times that are generally best for you. All right. And again, that leaves you plenty of space to fill that in. And I'll update here. So that's all you would need to do to create the form and create the fields. And then if you want to put this on a page, which of course most people would, we do that someplace else. But before we go there, we want to look at what happens if somebody completes a form. So that's where settings come into play. You have form settings, confirmations, and notifications. We'll look at overall settings first. Here's where you have your title and how you want things to lay out, what you want your form button to lay out or look like. So if you have an image you wanted to upload, then you would just provide the path where it would find that image, where we can use text. And then you see here that there's a save and continue option, anti-spam honeypot, which I always select. And you can schedule a form to go out or be active at a certain time. So say, for example, you were doing an online election and ballots were open from 6 in the morning till midnight. You can schedule the form to be open at precisely the times it's supposed to be. If you want people to be able to log in or to log in first, then they can save and continue a form, but it won't just hold that information indefinitely. You would need to most likely not use this unless you had the type of a site where people log in and with their own username and password every time. There's a good example of where this is beneficial. This is called conditional logic, and this is the form button, so that's what you use to submit the form. Suppose that you wanted to make sure that only people who were, say, over 18 years old were able to use your form. I'm going to update the settings because I made one change. Now I can go back here, and I'm just going to add a question of that nature. So if you're providing information where you want them to be able to select more than one option, you can I'm sorry, someone said I don't understand honey ham. Um, that's actually honey pot. I'll show you what that is. So form settings. At the bottom of the form settings here, see where it says enable anti-spam honeypot? What happens is when you put a form online, you'll get a lot of bots that come by and fill it out. So you might get hundreds and hundreds of entries because some bot in Russia found it and just started submitting tons of information. And they will do that. A lot of it's sales related. So you'll go to look at your form entries, then you'll see, hi, did you know that you can save money by buying this insurance? That type of thing. So that's spam. So the same type of spam that you might get by email also comes in by bots that will fill out your form hundreds of times under different names, just trying to spread spam everywhere. And what this anti-spam honeypot does is it creates a false type of CAPTCHA that only the bots see. So a human won't even know it's there, but a bot will keep trying to fill out a CAPTCHA that doesn't really exist, and it'll just send them down a path that goes nowhere. And it'll basically trick the bot, the spam bot, into a dead-end path that doesn't allow it to submit the form. That's what an anti-spam honeypot is. So that's why I always select that option there. There are, again, tons of options you can go through here to look at. We talked about scheduling a form, enable entry limit. Suppose you have prizes and you only have one of each, and whoever wins can come in first, can come in and pick their prize. You could have something where you have a list of the prizes, and as soon as somebody picks one, nobody else can pick that one. You could do that sort of thing with just about anything. So you can say you had something where you're giving people coupons, and the first 10 people who complete the form get a discount. You can click this and say only allow 10 total entries, for example. So you could say per day, per week, per month, per year. It's basically restricting how many times somebody can complete the form. And then, okay, so the honeypot thing seems like it made sense. And then now I'm going back up here and back over to our form. That's fine. And now suppose again that I wanted to make sure that you have that somebody who submits the form is at least 18 years old. So that's going to be a radio button. If you have them, if it's one answer or another, it's a radio button. Now, since I just clicked that, that's adding that down here. I'm going to delete it and show you what I could have also done is instead of clicking where it goes all the way to the bottom and I have to drag it up, if I know I'm going to put it here, I can take this and just drag it right in there. So those are radio buttons. And that's what you use if they have to pick one of several options. So I'll go in here, for example, and this one's pretty simple. It's binary. You know, are you at least 18 years old? Or of age, whatever you wanted to put, you get the idea. And I can make that required. So they have to fill that out before they can submit the form. And I'm going to update that. And now if they're not at least that old, then I'm not going to allow them to submit the form. So what I can do is go back over here to settings and form settings. And I can go down here to that input button and enable conditional logic and say, show this button if all the following match. Are you at least 18 years old? Is, we can label those choices, but let's just say first choice. And I'm going to go back and do that right now. So if I go back here to edit, what I should have done is right here, and it tells you what to do is just yes. That was just telling me that I already added a conditional logic option. So be careful about changing it. All right, so we've got that, and I'm going to update and then go back to settings and form settings. And are you at least 18 years old is yes. And you'll see that's how they evolve now. So now I can update form settings again. And when we put that on the page next, you're going to see that unless I show that I'm at least 18 years old or say that, then it's not going to allow me to submit the form. Okay, I see a question here. Once the form is finished, how do you update it? I'll show you that in a second. So we'll put it on a page first. And I like to have several tabs open up here, so I'll duplicate. And then I'm going to go down here to pages, all pages. And I could have just clicked new. But what I'm going to do is a couple things. One, I'm going to show you in advance, and we'll go back into the settings in a second. From the previous registration page, we had this web dev student survey. I had it set up so that when somebody submits a form, it gives them, takes them back to a confirmation page. And so we'll make another one of those, and I'll show you how that works too. But it's generally a lot better than the default option. So first, I will come up here and add a new page. And I'm going to call this again, WordPress account information. And we'll fix that. Something to pay attention to when you're making pages is whatever you title the page is becomes your URL. So you generally don't want to title a page too long, or else you'll have really long URLs. And you can edit that, but it's just what it sets it up as a default. And you've got lots of options over here on the pages. But for right now, we're focused on the form. So when we start getting deeper into development and setting up all of your own sites and adding content, we'll spend more time in what all of these details are. And they all vary by the theme that you use. We'll also most likely be using Elementor when we start talking about style and design, because you can do a lot with that to make your pages look beautiful and clean and crisp. So we'll dig into that later. It's beyond what we need to do for today. So now that we have a new page set up here or started, I could have grabbed a shortcode from Gravity Forms, and I'll show you what that means in a little while when we actually need them. But we don't need them here because Gravity Forms gives you an option right here to add a form. So I'll say add a form, and then I can select the form that I want. And here is WordPress setup information. And we can choose whether or not we want to display the form title and description and enable Ajax, which it's not really that important as long as it works. We don't need anything for a tab index. So I'll just insert the form. And if you see what's here in these square brackets, that's what's called a shortcode. So what happens is a lot of different WordPress plugins use this type of thing. And you can just paste something like this into any page or post, and it'll render the form wherever that shortcode has been pasted. So now that I've done that, I'll click Publish. And that should be ready. So I'm going to duplicate my tab again because I like to be able to look at the back end and the front end, all the different components of what I'm working on. I like to be able to look at simultaneously so I can not have to keep changing pages. So right now we've got the form there. We have the page with the form shortcode right there. And now I'm going to duplicate this tab and say view page. So this is the same page. I'm going to view page, and that shows me what it looks like from the front end. So you can see here it's showing the page title, and this is the form title. Now this is something you won't normally have to deal with, but I'll show you anyway. So this is right now we're having an issue due to this theme conflicting a little bit with Gravity Forms. Those should be buttons, like little circles. And you don't normally have to do this. It's just a glitch in this theme code. So I can go back and fix that code. But for now, I'm going to show you something else to use because it's very helpful if you ever want to change how any of this looks. So the colors, etc., the fonts, you can see here these are showing up as brown, right? So all we have to do to fix these is there's another plugin called Styles and Layouts for Gravity Forms. And that's what you're seeing here. That's already in. And by having that plugin in, I can open up any form and then go here to Styles and Layouts. And that option normally doesn't show in Gravity Forms without that plugin. And you can see here, I can do anything I want with any of that. So select a form. We've already got that form selected because that's where we started. And now I'm going to go down here to radio inputs, which again, you'll probably never have to do this, but there are other things you might want to do. And you can see I just added some padding here. So now with that published, and it might take a minute to show here on the front end. Let's see if it's coming through yet. There you go. So by just adding that padding, now you can see it works like it's supposed to. Okay, so there's the form, and you'll notice that submit button's not showing yet. So I have no checked here. If I select yes, there's the submit button. And now let's say with that submit button, I want to add some spacing before the S and at the end of the T, so some space between the edge of the button and that text. I can again go back here to my style tools for Gravity Forms. Here's the submit button. And I can say, let's add padding. We'll say 10 pixels on the left, 10 on the right. And we'll put 5 above and below. Probably better off with 3, actually. Let's see what that looks like. Excuse me. And while we're back here, you see that you can create margins, you can do borders and colors and just about anything that you want in Gravity Forms. So that's published. Let's go back out and refresh. Oh, so I need to make sure I select yes again. And there you can see that looks nicer. That added some padding around that word, then made it nice and easy. So everything that normally you would need a coder for, there's usually something already available inside WordPress that will allow you to do it just that simply. And if you ever run into any problems, even long after the class is over, don't bang your head against the wall. Chances are it's a problem I've run into before and figured out a solution. So just get in touch with me and we'll keep this going and keep you moving forward. But if things work out as planned, all your websites are going to be done up and running fine before the class is over. And that's again why I want to schedule one-on-one time with each of you. It seems again that some people in the class haven't registered a domain yet and haven't set up hosting yet. And even if it's just that, we'll get online together and I'll help you set it up. So you'll need that in your information, on your screen to set up your accounts. But I can walk you through the best way to do it and how to do it. And one thing I'd mentioned, GoDaddy seems to be it's what everybody knows. It's probably the most used registration system out there for domains. The one disadvantage is that they charge for privacy. So if you register a domain, your name and your address are going to go into the domain registry. And what happens is then you start getting a lot of junk mail and a lot of solicitation calls because people can extract your info right out of there. And they pay or they charge if you want privacy. I think they charge, it used to be $8, but I think it's like now $10 or $11 a year in addition to your domain registration fees if you want to keep your information private. NameSilo offers private registration for free. So that's what I've been using lately is NameSilo rather than GoDaddy. But either one will work, and if you're not going to if you don't care about it being private, then it doesn't matter. It's not going to save you anything anyway. Okay, so let's say we're going to fill this out. I'll show you what happens then. And then one of the questions I'll come back to is once the form is finished is how do you update it? All right, so we'll start here and I'm going to fill out Bob. And by the way, I have a lot of this stuff saved. Like normally if I go to fill out a form, I've got a lot of this there. But you may notice I'm using a new browser this week that you should probably check out. We'll do a little sidestep there. I'll talk about it after we finish the form. But it's called Brave, and it helps you take more control over your online privacy. So that's what this little lion head icon is. It's a fork off of Chrome. But let's just go forward with this, and then we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm saying, yes, I am at least 18 years old. I can put in my email address. Just stick with a short one there. Phone. And since this is going to be posted on a website, I'm just going to do that, which is not real. Hosting account login URL. So I'll just put url.com, but you know what would go here. So if it were GoDaddy, whatever the login URL is to get to your registration account, that's what I would need. Username, password. Don't ever use password. There are, as if those of you who have attended my cybersecurity classes have heard before, there are databases online in the dark web that are constantly updated with the most used passwords so that when hackers try to brute force a site, they know which passwords are most likely to work. And one that is still used frequently is something like password or password 123. And it's just crazy. It's like living in a terrible neighborhood and not putting locks on your doors. So anyway, this is just for demo purposes. And the same thing here. So the URL for logging in and the username, and I'm emphasizing temporary password. So when you set it up, use some type of temporary password for me, and then I'll use that to log in on both of these accounts. And what I'm going to be doing is taking your domain registration and I'm going to point the domain towards your hosting account. And then on your hosting account, I'm going to install WordPress for you and set everything up so it's ready to go. And then in the next class, once you're set, you'll be able to do all the things you see me doing here. So we'll be able to walk through together and add plugins, and I'll show you how to add themes or even create your own theme if you're interested. And most importantly, from a theme standpoint, how to use Elementor Page Builder. Excuse my cough, please. I'm just getting over a cold. It seems like every time I fly someplace, I come back with something. But if you hear pauses, it's because I'm hitting my mute button to cough. So anyway, that's what we would need here. And then this is just one of the best times, for you to meet. Wednesday after 6 p.m. Sat before 9 a.m. Okay, so whatever works best for you. And just submit the form. Now, what's going to happen when we submit is I'll come back here. Let me see where we had that form. Yeah, I've already moved away from that page. So here's the form right here. So in these settings, confirmation is what happens when somebody submits the button. So there's confirmations and notifications. Confirmations are for the person who submitted the form. Notifications are for an administrator who might need to be alerted when somebody completes the form. So you'll see the default confirmation right here is just text, and it says, thanks for contacting us. We'll get in touch with you shortly. So you can edit that text, but you can do a lot more than that too. And I'll show you that in a second. So if I go back here to the form and I submit, there it is. Thanks for contacting us. We'll get in touch with you shortly. And normally there'd be a lot of other information here, so it kind of gets crowded out. So the other option you can use is a confirmation page. So we already have one. I think I showed you that for the other form that we did. So let's look at this one. And this one's thank you for completing the survey. This is very easy, Bob. So we'll create a different one just to show you how that all works. And we'll call this one WP confirmation. And I guess info confirmation. It's not as important. Obviously, this is just a class site that's never going to go live for anything. And here we can say, thank you for providing your account and login info. Once work is complete, you should change your password. And I might say something too, like I'll be in touch. And I will say that. I will be in touch to schedule one-on-one time to get your site up and running. Okay, so now it's going to say this instead. And I could center that if I want to. And normally, if it were a real page, I'd probably have a picture of something there. And you can also change this from just being paragraph text to maybe a little larger, heading 3. So I'm just going to do this for now and say publish. So I just created a page with just this information on it. And now what I can do is go back to the form. And here in default confirmation, edit. And instead of it being text, I can take them to a page. And then select the page. And that would be WP info confirmation, the page we just created. And save information. So now if somebody comes back and completes the form, let's see here, we'll go back and then I'll just refresh to empty it out. Yes. And again, just going through the motions here. And I really don't have to because we didn't put required on all of these, but Obviously, I need all of that information requested to be able to complete the work. And then again, submit. And now you can see it took me to that page. And normally, again, I'd have more graphics and things like that. Or depending on what the form is for, you can also put additional instructions. So let's say that you have options, like if it's, say, your services offered could be editorial services, graphic design, page layout, web design, whatever it might be, depending on which one they select, you could have different information on that page saying it sounds like, you know, you might be interested in graphic design and editorial services. Check out these pages to see more of our work in that area, something along those lines. So you can, instead of them just seeing this and leaving your site, they see this and then you have some action items for them to take to get them more engaged with you right from the beginning. All right, so again, there was a question asked, once the form is finished, how do you update it? So that's it. So if I go back here to forms at any time, so you can see we have a couple entries. I could go here to show you those. It should be, let's see. Well, let's just go back to this way. And it shows entries here. So this is one we've done previously. This is the one we just did, the demo. So I can select entries there and it would show me what was entered. If I want to change what shows, I can click over there on the right and decide what I want to show over here. So I don't know why I have a do you drive to work. That must have been a different form that we were experimenting with. Let me make sure I have the right one up here. Oh, that was just a demo. Yeah, okay. So let's go to WordPress setup information. And that's more like it. So now if I want to see different information here, I can just click that and then determine what I want to show. So let's say I want to know which days are best. I'll just save that. And now you can see that that shows here. Now, all of this information can also be exported as a CSV file. So if you want to export your entries into, say, like an Excel spreadsheet. So suppose, for example, you have some event going on and you ask people to register for the event and you create the form. When you're done, you can go to export, import, export. And we want to export entries. And that would be for the WordPress setup information. We can pick which fields we want or just select all. We can set by date and you can add, conditional logic too. So if any form contains or does not contain or is, then you can specify a condition that's needed for it to print. And then just download the export file. And it comes in as, it's called Microsoft Excel, comma separated values. But comma separated values are a type of file that's called a CSV file. And that works with almost any type of database. So if you are moving data from one database to another, you can export it as a CSV file from one database and import it into the other database. And it just, again, uses commas to separate values so that it knows where to break it up in the table. So if I save that and open it, you'll see that it looks just like an Excel spreadsheet. That's it. So all your data is right there. So suppose, for example, you had some type of an event and you wanted people to register for it. They could register through your website using your form, and then you can export that into an Excel spreadsheet or even open it as a Google Sheet and edit the information there and even carry it around on your phone where it would constantly be updated. There are a lot of other things that you can do with this system, but that gives you a general idea of how to do it. And with that, I'm going to right now send that form out to all of you. So let's see if I go back here. And it looks like there are a couple that I already have sessions scheduled with. And if that's the case, or if I've already worked with you, I already have this information. So any of you who've already given me that or were beyond this point already, you don't need to fill this out, but we can still book the next session. For everybody else, I'm going to put this into the chat box right now. And send. So if you can, click that link that I just set out in the chat box, bookmark it, and then complete that whenever you can. And it'll send the information back to me that I need to get started. And I should probably put, I'm going to put one more just to protect myself here. So I'm going back into forms and our WordPress setup information. And I'm going to use radio buttons again. This time I want it at the bottom, so that's fine. And I'm going to say, do you give permission for Bob Hollis to log in on these accounts to set up your WordPress site? All right. And I should probably say on these accounts. And again, here it'd be yes, no. And this is required. That way I know for sure I'm not going to be accused of hacking. And I'll update that. And we're getting rid of this because that's irrelevant. So this is an example of how you can update a form once it's done. But you'll notice when I go to delete this one, it's going to tell me that if I delete this field, then that's also going to delete any data that's been entered in that field. So you can do that. You know, I can come in here and delete it. Then I'll do it now to show you the warning, and then I'll back out. So warning, the form contains conditional logic dependent on this field. Deleting this field will deactivate those conditional logic rules and also delete any entry, any entered data associated with the field. So I'm going to cancel that. Though I could do it in this case because it's not that important for what we're doing. But the other thing I can do is just hide it. So suppose I had a field here to register for different options, or suppose there were shirt sizes or something and I was suddenly out of extra large, but I didn't want to delete the extra large orders that have already been submitted. Then when we look into e-commerce later, I'll show you a whole bunch of ways to do things like that, way beyond gravity forms. But for now, just in that scenario, the other thing I can do is come in here. Oops, where'd it go? Let's go back up here. Okay. I can make this hidden. So instead of deleting it where I'd lose all the data that's been submitted, I can just click hidden and update. And now if somebody came to use the form, they wouldn't see that. Now in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it because it's not important for us. And I'll update. And then I'll go back into settings and form settings. And that conditional logic that we previously set up, I'll do the same kind of thing. I'll only say show this form button if all the following match. Do you give permission to Bob Hollis to log in on these accounts? Is yes. So you can now fill out that form, but if I go back here and refresh, you see that that 18-year-old thing is gone. We don't require that anymore. And down here, it's about the permissions. And that's not showing. There's no submit button. But as soon as I click yes, I give permission, then the submit button is there. All right, and you can see that one's required too. Anything with an asterisk is required. Any questions on forms Or are there any other specific types of things you'd like to do with the form that I can demo for you? And I'm watching the question box right now. So if there is anything else you'd like to see with the type of thing you can do with the form, let me know and we can do it now. And if not, if you have something specific later, then we can set it up directly on your website at that time. Okay, I'm not seeing any new questions come in, so we'll just keep moving forward. So one of the other cool things you can do with the form is you can put information out in other places as well. So if, say you wanted somebody to be able to submit something and then show their information, I can show you an example of that. This was a thing I did for a group at Carnegie Mellon while I was in Pittsburgh last week or 2 weeks ago for about 3 weeks. So this was a large event at Carnegie Mellon, and people could come in and register. And when the registration button's gone now because it's over. But then anybody who registered, I could set up a directory, and for who's in, it shows them all right here. So if you had an event registration and, you know, the more people that showed, the more excited everybody got. And we ended up having more than 250 come back. But that's something that you can do with these forms. So if you ever want to show that someplace, then you can. And you can pick which fields to show. Now we talked about confirmation. That's for the people who are submitting the form so they know the form went through. But there are also notifications. And notifications are what go to the administrator so they know something got submitted. So there's different ways, you know, if you're an administrator, you can just log in and come back and look at the entries for any form. And you know, you pick which form up here. And that's, so you pick the form. We're still on this one. And then you can click entries to see just what we were doing. But you can also get an individual email notification every time something's done. So if I go here to notifications, there are some good rules to remember. And I'm going to show them to you because I'd be a little bit remiss if I didn't. But don't let them confuse you or concern you because, again, I'll help you one-on-one to make sure that we set this up in a way that works for your specific website. But one of the things is send to email. By default, it goes to the admin email that's listed as the admin for the website. In this case, that's me. But let's say I wanted it to go to a different address or a different person, say a client, then I can just type in the address that I want it to go to. So when somebody completes the form, that's where it's going to be sent. And you can also do it in different ways where you can configure multiple routing. So you can also do it by selecting a field. So I can say send it to whatever email is submitted in this field. The other thing I can do, which is pretty cool, is configure routing. So you can do conditional logic. So for example, I can say send to Bob, and I would put an email address. So this is bobhollis@gmail.com. If email is, and let's just say if, let's see, do you give permission to Bob? Okay, I'll say, if they say yes, then it goes to me. And I'm just going to say not Bob Hollis. So you can imagine where this is useful. As if we had a question of, say, what product line are you interested in? So let's say you had a small firm and you have one person who does copywriting and another person who does graphic design, and you had check boxes or well, it could be both. It could be check boxes or radio buttons in that case, and said which of the services are you interested in. So it could be one or the other, but normally you'd want to use check boxes in that case so they can pick both of them. And then you could have routing. So in this case, the saying is no, but you can get the idea of how you would do that with different product lines. So if somebody does not give permission or gives permission, then this gets sent to me. If they do not give permission, then it might go to, say, some salesperson that says, hey, I saw you didn't want to give permission. I'm giving you a call to find out why. I didn't want you to understand that we can't work on your website if you don't give us the permission to do it. Something like that. A more pragmatic use that I've used this for with a bunch of my clients is it goes to different departments depending on what they're doing. So you have a customer service form, and it says, are you interested in service A, B, C, D, or E? And depending on which one they select, that determines which person gets an email letting them know that that service has been requested. And it can be multiple people too. So if they pick item A, maybe 3 people get notified. If they pick item B, another person. If they pick item C, 4 different people. But it gives you a lot of options with those forms to do something like that. In here, it gives you different options too for information. And this all comes out of the form variables. So I can use these merge tags and say, what would I want here? Well, let's start with, say, first name. And I'll add a space and last name. Okay, so when the email comes in notifying you that somebody's completed the form, it's going to show that first and last name. Here's the part that's a little tricky. You can see by default it says admin email. But if you leave that as admin email and your email doesn't end in conferencereg.com, there's a good chance it's never going to get through to anybody. Because if a spam filter sees that, they're going to think for sure that it's spam because the email address sending doesn't match the domain that it's coming from. So it would look like somebody, if you've ever set up an Outlook account, even especially the old desktop based, you can show a sending name of whatever you want it to be. I could send my name as, Ronald McDonald or something like that, and it'll go out that way. You can make it look that way, but it's not really going through the servers. It's just text that looks like that. So what you have to do here in the from email, you have to make sure you use an email address that matches the domain name. So here I'm just going to say info@conferencereg.com. So that would be my sending address. And that way, since this conferencereg.com matches this, it doesn't look like I'm a spammer spoofing somebody else's email address. When they reply, that's where you can see here, and an email address you would like to be used as the reply address for the notification email. So if I want them to reply back to me, then that would be my address. If I want to reply back to them, you could put in their email address. And even that's just a field here. So that might be where I want to put in something like this. And that's an email that I would reply back to when the form came in, or they would reply back to. So actually, I guess this would be better to be the admin email in this case. And then you can BCC yourself if you want to. And down here, again, this is an example of a short code using curly brackets instead of square brackets. And it's just all fields, but you can also be much more specific. So you'll notice if I click over here, it gives me options to choose fields. So if I wanted that to be a little bit more personal and customized, I could say dear, and then go over here and select first name. And continue. Thank you for whatever. Excuse me. And that would so you can see how that would work. Now in this case, we're just notifying the administrator, so that's more personal than it needs to be. But you get the idea. You can show whatever you like in there. And then of course just save. Excuse me. They just know that that's there's not an @ symbol in there. So that's obviously not a real email address, but we don't need those anyway. But that's how that would work. And this is relatively new, this personal data. And excuse me 1 second, I need to drink some water here. Okay, that's better. So there are also new rules related to websites that are generally driven by this. It's called GDPR, and it's a privacy rights thing that started in Europe, but is generally applying to sites all over the world now. And that's where you give people more rights over their own data that they submit. And you're supposed to tell them what information you collect when they use the form. So you can either choose things like prevent the storage of IP addresses if you don't want to even keep that. You can say retain entries indefinitely, trash automatically, delete entries permanently, enable integration with WordPress tools for exporting and erasing personal data. And you're supposed to give people their own right to do that sort of thing. So depending on what your situation is, these can all be configured to meet your needs. And WordPress is adding a lot of new tools and plugins to help people stay in compliance with things like that. So that's basically how you use forms. Any other questions on things that you can do with them? Seeing none, we'll move on. And so any of you who have not scheduled time with me but would like to, feel free to go ahead and complete that link that I just sent out. And I'll send it out directly to everybody after the class as well. I see a hand up. That might be old. I think we got to that one. And we got to that one. Okay, so I see a couple questions came in, but I think I've answered them all. If I haven't, then just resubmit that or ping me, and I'll get back to you on that. Okay, so what we can do now is we can start adding more plugins for features, but I think it might be better for me to work with everybody one-on-one on that, unless there's something that everybody thinks it would be useful. So you're welcome to submit a specific feature through our chat box if you like, the question box, if you want to know how to do something specific. Other than that, I'm going to move into something called Elementor and start talking about page design and the types of things you can do with it. And that's a very hands-on, practical kind of thing for building pages that goes way beyond what WordPress normally has. And then we'll step back in the next class that's going to focus on themes specifically and talk about the types of things that you want to consider while you're building a theme. So color schemes and things of that nature. But for right now, I'm going to show you how to use Elementor and how you can create a whole site and make it look really fantastic with these types of page builders. And doing so, you don't even really need a theme anymore. It's good to have something there, as a framework, but you don't need it for all of the different design elements because you can change them page by page and make them any site that you want. Well, let's see. I have some questions here. So one was, once a form is finished, how do you update it? We did that. Training video. Is that a question of how you would embed a training video into a website? Got it. Okay. So I'm going to talk about that, and then we'll come back to the next few questions here. So we'll tackle one at a time. So in terms of embedding a training video, there are numerous ways to do that. And I usually like to host them somewhere else because if you have a video on your web server and somebody comes in to watch that, that's a lot of data moving across your bandwidth. And if you have a low cost hosting account, chances are you might get dinged for it. So they tell you you have unlimited bandwidth and all of this stuff when you sign up. But then if your site starts getting busy and you're on a shared IP or shared hosting, then it'll start to slow down the other sites on hosting. And so they'll send you a letter saying, hey, you're getting too much traffic here, or using too much of your bandwidth. We would like you to upgrade to a higher price account. Well, that's not good. And it also, just even having your site slow down is not good. So the more things that you can feed through other people's sites, the better off you are, or through other third-party servers. If it's the type of thing where you don't want other people to know it's there, you'd handle it differently than if it were something that you really want to propagate. So a lot of people that do training videos or training classes uh, do it for the sales opportunity. So they um, they want to they do the training, but they want it to go out there and spread it far and wide. And say they're a nonprofit, for example, and they're focusing on how to I don't know, how to keep pollution out of rivers and streams in your neighborhood, then that might be something they want to go everywhere. So the main platform I typically go to first for any type of video is YouTube, because they've got a lot of these great tools and things already built in, and it's very easy to integrate back into your website. So when you put a video on YouTube, you can put it out there to be public, or you can say it's private, or you can say unlisted. And depending on what I have, again, if it's something I want to promote as like a community service type training, or if I do something and it's also a sales tool, so I want millions and millions of people to see it, because when they watch my video, then they're going to want to hire me to do the work, then I would just put it public. If it's something that I'm going to put into a website, but I don't generally want it to show up on YouTube search results, so only people who have the link can actually see the video. And if somebody has a search for the video, they won't find it. Then I use the unlisted option. And so I'll show you how to do that right now. So first I'm going to log in on YouTube. And I'm already logged in on my Google account. So I've got a bunch of videos, things up here, say, different California Capitol stuff, just lots of things. So let's say here that I just chose, say, an NRC board meeting. Then I could do it with any video. It doesn't even have to be mine. Let me just do a search and say training video and see what comes up here. Pizza Hut training video, 1988. Who wouldn't want to watch that? Here's a beginner guide to Excel. So there's a bunch of ways you can do it. I can grab this. To this Excel basics. Freeze that here. And I can just grab this URL and then go back to any page. So I'm going to go back to our dashboard and a page. You can do it in a post too. Either way it works. It's all the same. And now we have our own YouTube thing set up here. So I'll show you that in a minute, because it's a lot cooler, the things you can do with it. And that's actually how we have our own recordings here. So the one we're using right now, you'll notice whichever one I click moves up into the main frame. So if I were to click this, it moved up to the top to start showing. If I were to click there, you can see which one shows. So it's called a gallery, and I can make this bigger to come all the way across and have all these thumbnails of, say 9 or 10 or 15, whatever I want, showing across here. And they can click any one of them and watch it right on the page. But based on what we just did, where I just took this random video and copied the link, I can also go back in and say add a new page, and I'll call this demo Excel video. Now once I'm here, I can click add media, and here you can see create video playlist, featured image, insert from URL, anything that you want. Create audio playlist, create a gallery. So if I want to just insert from URL, I can paste that in, and you can see it pulled that right up. Insert into page. There it is. And then I can click publish. And if I duplicate that so I can see the back page, then here go to view page. So I think I might have blockers set up. Sorry, I mentioned that I've been using Brave, and I have all of these extra security things in that I've been playing with. But let's talk about Brave for just a second, because it's pretty cool. You can download this for free, and it was created by people at Google who got tired of just all the spyware that they know is part of Chrome. So they did a fork off of Chrome that gives you a lot more control. So now you can use, I'll pull up the page, I think it's just brave.com. You can see examples here. I've only had this running for a few days, and it's already blocked 14,000 plus ads and trackers. It saved me 12 minutes of load time. And on 174 sites, it automatically moved me to HTTPS instead of HTTP. And it's all free. So if I go to brave.com, you can also, by the way, earn money. So usually the advertisers and the publishers make all of the money off of you. So here's Brave's thing is you are not a product. And if any of you, again, have been in my privacy class, we talk about how with Facebook, etc., the reason it's free is because you're not the customer, you're the product. And you're entering all of your information into basically the front end of a marketing database. This you could download for free. It works on Mac, PC, or Linux. And I'm using it instead of Chrome now. You can also use all the Chrome Store add-ons and plugins if you need them. So it has all the advantages of Chrome without any of the detriments. And you can sign up for Brave reward points. And then you have options to actually make money by viewing ads instead of having somebody else make money off of you viewing ads. So it's a pretty cool thing you might want to check out on the side. And that's, I have so many blockers set up, that's got to be why that's not showing. You can see it here that it shows on the page. But if I click view page, here, let's do this. It might be based off of Chrome. It could be the same thing. And what I probably need to do is allow pop-ups. While that other browser is opening, let's see. There we go. Did I not save that? I might just need to update the page. Let me close these things that I don't need. Update. And view. That's really strange. Normally that should show right there. It's got to be one of my blockers, and I have heavy security on Firefox too, but that should still be showing. I'm not sure why that's not showing on the homepage right now, but I'll figure it out. Sorry about that. I don't want to keep snooping around now because it'll take a lot of time for me to sort through and see what's going on. But every other time I've done this for any other site, it's worked, and you can see that this works here. Now, if you're going to do a training series, there are other things you can do too, though. So let's not just stop there. So back here, depending on the video, you can see here too that there's an option to share. And this is all determined by what the publisher decides. So let's say though that I want to embed it. So I want to put this into a website. I can click embed, and it's giving me this information. So now I can even say when to start. So suppose at the beginning there's like a 15-second thing of some guy hosing his dog off in the backyard or something that has nothing to do with what you want. You can say, I want to embed the video, but I want it to start at second 15. And then whether or not to show player controls, enable privacy enhanced mode, etc. So all I have to do is copy this. And this is called an embed code. It's provided right by YouTube. And if anybody's worried about copyright and that sort of thing using somebody else's video, read the copyright user privileges for YouTube before you publish any of your own. And then make sure you choose the one that you need. But let's go back here to this page again. And I'm going to go ahead and edit. And there's that video that for some reason isn't showing up on the front page, even though it's here. I'm going to get rid of that. And whenever you're putting code in, by the way, this is a little toggle bar on the current editor that shows a second row if you ever need it. But I want to emphasize these tabs here. The visual tab lets you use what's called a WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get. And that's just what you would think, where you can type things in and it's just like using a Word document. So you can make it bold, you can make it italic, you can choose different formats for it. You can choose colors and all of those things that you would expect. Alignment, make it a link. We'll go through some of these a little later, but the one we're going to be using is far better anyway, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Now, if you were to look at this here, again, there's no code. That's just a standard WYSIWYG editor. If I click the text tab, this is all the code that makes that happen. I'm showing you this for a couple reasons. One is whenever you have an embed code or something along those lines, you want to make sure that you're on the text tab when you paste that in. The other reason I'm showing you this is there are some times where you'll see a widget that says enter your HTML code and you think, oh crap, I don't know HTML. How am I going to make my text look the way I want it? Well, all you have to do is open up a new page here, create it to look the way you want it. So something like, I don't need no stinking CSS, which is it's a quote from Treasure of the Sierra Madre, believe it or not. We don't need no stinking badges. But anyway, let's say I've got this here and I can put that where I want and make it as bold and italic and heading to, all of that, and make it look exactly like I want it to look. Then just come over here and copy. There's your CSS or HTML code. So that's all you need to do. If they ever want you to enter HTML and you're not a coder, you don't need to be. Just make it look the way you want. Come here and copy. Now, in this case, I'm going to get rid of all this. And that's also useful if there's ever like an extra space or something and you can't figure out why. You can go back here and look. And if there were code there, then it would seem obvious. It would show you where the space was coming from. For right now, I'm just going to copy that embed code that we just copied over. Well, that's not it, is it? Let's go back here and we're going to go again to share, embed, and we'll just leave it like that. I'm going to copy this, and this is what's called an iframe. So see how that says iframe? So what it's doing is basically showing that video through your website, but it's all still living here on YouTube. And that way it's not taking up your server capacity or resources, whatever it's playing. It's using the YouTube server resources. So you don't have to ever worry about it playing slow or loading slow, anything like that. So if I go back here to edit page, again, I'm going to get rid of that temporary text. I'm going to paste in this text we just copied from our iframe. Now I can go back here from text to visual. And there it is. So let's see if this one works like it's supposed to. So I'll click update. And now let's look at that page again. Yeah, this is I'm gonna have to dig into this and see what's going on. We might have iframes blocked. There is a lot of security in Brave and a lot of security settings. And usually I have mine tweaked up pretty hard. But this works like 99% of the time. In fact, this is the first time I've seen it not show. But like I said, it's a new browser that I've been playing around with, so I'm not sure where that setting is. Possibly, no, that's not it. It's sometimes if things are blocked, you can see a message here or here. Yeah, see all this stuff? So this is probably what's going on. Let me turn off these shields and try that again. Nope, still not. But you get the idea. I'll see what's going on there and make sure that that works. But it will work. I guarantee that. That's how you can embed video. Now the one that we have here, these are obviously working. What you can do here is set up a whole playlist to show as a gallery. So I used a plugin for this. So here it's if I go to my plugins. And I'm just going to show active. So this is called Yo2WP, so short for YouTube Gallery, Yo2 WordPress, and that's what this is. So you have general settings here, and you need an API key, which you can create for free from Google, and then you can change all the settings that you want for however you want to do it. So here I'm saying I want it to be a grid. I want it to have 3 columns, 12 videos per page. Pagination means can you put numbers across the bottom, so go to the second page of videos, third page of videos, etc. The ratio that I want for the thumbnails, whether or not to show the titles and descriptions. That's pretty straightforward. Then all the player settings. So what I want the width and how large do I want it to be? Do I want it to be a pop-up? Now here, I'm going to say, let's take that a bit wider because we can see here that that should be at least probably page width. And that's about 600 now. I'm going to take that up to 900 and see what that looks like. Title, description, etc., controls. You can see what all of these are, whether or not to show a brand logo. But for now, I'll save those settings. Let's see what that did on the front. There, that looks better. And so now our third thumbnail would be here if we added another video. And that can be done just by adding to a playlist. So for example, this recording that we're making right now is going to be added to the playlist that I'm showing here. And when I do, it's going to automatically show on the page right there. Now going back to this, this again is where you can control that. Styling, you get some idea of what it would look like. You can customize all of this. Effects, caching. So if you want your videos to cache at the local level or on the browser level, you could select yes. And caching just makes things, it kind of saves them in short-term memory. And so if you think about things that you might use in your desk, say you have an old-fashioned office and you have filing cabinets, and then you have desk drawers, and you have some things that you just keep right on your desk, but you don't have a lot of space there. So you keep the things you're using a lot on your desk. And that's what caching basically does. The information that you've been loading a lot and using right on your browser will be cached in your browser. So something might change on the website, but your browser still has the cached version, so it can load it for you quickly, but it's not going to be complete and up to date. And that's what that's about. So you can enable cache to make them load faster, and then it'll update the cache, say once a day. You can choose how often you'd like it to update, or delete the cache to start over. So suppose you added a video to your playlist and people need to see it in 5 minutes, then you might delete your cache and say, refresh my cache every 5 minutes to make sure that any new videos are showing. The API is just, again, the free API key from YouTube, and it walks you through how to get that. That doesn't cost anything. And this looks like just some intro information. So that's the basic setup of it. And then you go down here to shortcode generator, and you tell it what you want to do. So here's a playlist, and the playlist is something that you can create in YouTube. So if I go back here to YouTube, let me go back to mine and show more. And I know I have one for this class. Here we go. So this is the California Capital Web Development Series 2019. There was session 1, here's session 2, and when I add session 3, that'll automatically show up on our website. And I could add any video I want. So let's say it's creating good video content can be challenging, but you might have things that you'd like people to know, and you might want to add information to your website that draws people in, but doesn't detract from anything that you'd like to do. So suppose, for example, you have an accounting firm and you do books for people, and you want them to be using QuickBooks because that makes it easier for you too, but you don't have time to teach them QuickBooks. So you can create a playlist like this simply. So let's say I go out and for that example, I say QuickBooks, and I find a couple I like that hopefully aren't competitors of mine trying to get the same business, so they look good or whatever it might be. Something, probably from Intuit, I know I can trust. Let's see if they have one. This is by QuickBooks, so there's a good chance they've got some good videos out there.
Ow, it hurts.
Excuse me. Then you can see they've probably got their own playlist. They do. So here's a view full playlist, QuickBooks Desktop 2020, Online Advanced, Enterprise. But I can pick any video that I want. I'm not going to play all. I'll say view playlist. And I'm just going to grab one here. Suppose I wanted to put these on my own website. I could use that playlist directly. Now, suppose it's something that isn't as laid out and done as this already. And of course, you could always say, go to the QuickBooks website to view this, but you always want to keep people on your own website if you can. And you want to add resources that draw people to your website and have them share it with people. So in this case, I might want to, again, if I'm an accountant and I want my clients to be able to use QuickBooks and know what they're doing, I could embed all these right into my site as a tutorial for people. And if I have more information later, I can add videos or replace videos. And then with that, all you do is it'll generate the short code. And then once it does, and again, you can also do channels by username, single video, multi-videos. But once it generates that, I'll show you what it looks like on the page. So here's the recordings page. If I click edit, that's all you see is that one short code. And this is the playlist that represents ours. So California Capital, you can see this playlist code right here. And all I had to do was back here when I generated the short code is I put in the playlist. So you can see it shows an example. Just put in that playlist URL and hit verify. And then it's going to create the short code for you. And you just copy that short code and paste it on a page anywhere that you like. And that's how you can add a video. All right. And then any more questions related to embedding videos? All right. And whenever we get together, the person who asked that question, we can schedule one-on-one time and we'll find something that you like and put it in your website. And if you don't have anything ready yet, we can just put in a placeholder and we'll create the page, put it on there, make sure everything works, but not publish the page on your website until you're ready to show it. But we'll get it going for you. All right, after the training video. So the next question was section completion. Before you must complete a section before going on. Got it. Okay. So that would be like if somebody were taking exams. So let's say that you had a series of exams and somebody has to take the first exam before they move on to the second exam. Is that kind of what you have in mind? Or the second part of the quiz? If you can do that in a lot of different ways. One is there are what's called learning management systems where you can set up quizzes and you can say that people would have to, be able to log in as users so you can track them. If they're just, coming in from the public, you don't know who it is. So you can't say whether or not they've completed one before that. But there are LMS plugins called learning management systems that would require somebody to do that, where they have to complete the first section before they complete a next section. Another way that's just popping into my head, I don't think it's very elegant probably, but I'm just thinking about, again, the power of gravity forms. Because since you can choose to make things conditional, you could probably do something like, let's go into this demo and see what we could do. So let's say I wanted to complete a section first. So we'll call this all section 1. And then we're going to put in another section called section 2. section 2. Um, well, this probably isn't the best way to do this. It's just coming off the top of my head as a way to do it. What you could do is you could put the questions in section 2 and make them all conditional so that they only show if section 1 is completed. So if somebody has to, make all these required, first of all, so you have to fill them in so they'd all have an asterisk by them. And then you could pick one and say, let's say, for example, here, do you own a car? Keep it simple. For section 2, we could say make all of this conditional. Let's see what they do in advance. Yeah, conditional logic. And you could say show this section if it wouldn't be all. So if, show this section if any of the following is true. And then you could say, do you own a car? Is yes, then show this section. If do you own a car is no, show this section. So no matter which one they pick, it would show this section, but it would only do it once this was completed. See what I mean? So again, that's not very elegant. I'm sure that there are more elegant ways to do that I haven't looked into it using this particular tool. With learning management systems, I have, and that's where, oh, okay, I see I'm referring to watching the videos in a sequence. Got it. So you'd want them to watch one video before they watch the next. We could probably do that in the same way, where even at the end of a video, let me think through that. Right now, I'm thinking through all the different ways you can do it, but I don't want to jump to conclusion before I think through the best way to do it. Then I'm going to introduce a business term right now that some of you have probably experienced but weren't familiar with the fact that it turns out to be one of my undergraduate professors won a Nobel Prize for this concept. Then he invented a word called satisficing. And satisficing is the blend of two words, satisfying and sacrificing. Because what happens is he did studies of American business decision making, and he evaluated the cost of people taking the first decision that solves a problem. So let's say you have a problem and you say, I need to fix this. The first solution that comes to mind is the one you use. There's an opportunity cost there, because if you would have said, all right, what are the other possible alternative solutions? And you find 3 or 4 and then think through those, there's a good chance that the second or third one you came up with is better than the first one. And so it's almost like jumping to conclusions or jumping to solution too quickly. You need to thoroughly evaluate the problem and think about the needs, results, outcomes, how you want to use it. And so in this case, that's what I would be doing if we just jump in. And so I'll think through it, and we'll figure out a really nice way to do that when we get online. All right, and I see, okay, and how do I choose appropriate hosting for my company? Are you talking about web hosting or video? And that would also possibly be determined by how secure your video needs to be. So if you're going to have video that shows through your website and you still want it hosted on a third-party platform for speed and that sort of thing, you might consider Amazon Web Services instead of something as public as YouTube. There's also Vimeo, but you can use different types of platforms that you might want to use. Amazon Web Services, AWS, is, believe it or not, way more impressive than their retail services. People in the tech world know all about Amazon Web Services, cloud computing services. They pretty much dominate the entire world when it comes to big data and storage. In fact, I don't know if it's still the case, but at least at one time, Netflix hosted all of their video on Amazon Web Services. And it's about the cheapest hosting you can find anywhere in terms of the type of space that you can create with it or use. So one that's pretty simple to set up and inexpensive is, let's see, Amazon S3 is what I'm looking for. Unless they change the name of it. And we don't want compute. What we basically want is storage. Excuse me. Sorry about the cough. Here, let me just go straight to S3. Is there a search tool here? Search. S3 is very inexpensive hosting that you can also use like a content management system. And that's what they're all showing here. Oh, these are S3 jobs. Here, let's just try this. What is Amazon S3? So this is a storage service, and it includes things like hosting videos. So you can put up a video on Amazon that nobody else would be able to just find, and then publish that through your website the same way that you would from YouTube. Let's see, not the forum. I'm looking back at the question box and the follow-ups. You might need more than one host, yes. But again, that just depends on how you want to do it and how busy your website is. So you can use, it'd be the same thing as if you were using YouTube to host your videos, but you're still using your hosting account for your website to run the videos through. So you have a hosting account, but you're using an iframe. So the video itself actually lives on the YouTube server, not yours, but you don't have to pay for that. Amazon S3, if you want to, again, get it off of your web server and onto a cheaper server. So let's say video takes up a lot of space and you don't want it to all be on your website hosting because you have space limitations. And downloading video creates a lot of strain because of the bandwidth, because that's a lot of information that you're passing through. So it might be fine if 1 or 2 people are watching, but if suddenly 300 people are watching, and that's all coming off of your website server, it could significantly slow down your website because it only has so much bandwidth. So the way you can get around that is by opening an Amazon S3 account. And at one point, there were even free versions that are just fine. So let's see, here's 12 months of free tier access. So here's an example, and I don't know what else included in that, but their free account for the first year might be all you need even. And if you have another server and you don't have a problem with bandwidth or something, you can host it right on your web server. I usually use YouTube because it's convenient and most of the stuff I want to get out. But other things, for example, here, I want everybody on our class to be able to see it. So, but I don't really want it to be public. So you'll notice that these are all set to be unlisted. So if somebody did a, oops, sorry. If somebody were to do a search, you can see that's unlisted, so it would not come up in search results. The only way somebody could watch it is if they actually had the link. If I wanted to go a step further, I can make it completely private, but then only very specific people, I can say the people with these email addresses that have YouTube accounts can view it, and that's it. So the best combination in this case is just to make it unlisted so it's not really out there in the public, and then feed it through a website and give everybody the website link. So the question about whether or not you might need more than one host, I'd say might. It depends on what you want to do, how much heavy traffic you're going to get, and whether or not a third-party hosting like YouTube or Vimeo that are free would work for you. So that's, I guess, the best answer to that question. And when we set up your site one-on-one, we can talk about those options and then look for the best option for you to use. Okay, looking for other questions. Any other questions around video or forms? Okay, so if that's the case, we can go back to taking a look at Elementor, just a quick introduction to that. And Elementor is pretty amazing. There are plenty of tutorial videos, so you don't have to catch this all at once. But I want to give you a quick feel for all the different things you can do with it because you can make some really, really cool websites. In fact, one that somebody just asked me to replicate recently. Let's see. I don't think I have that handy actually. But let's just get started with it. So here you can see you've got some very basic tools, and you can do things with tables. So right now you're not even seeing a table tool though, and I can add that in. That's pretty easy. I'll show you how you would do that if you just want a table tool. But I also want to show you the real limitations to that. So the WordPress editor is generally crappy now. It used to be pretty cool. People liked it, but it doesn't really have all the features that you'd like that you're normally used to in, say, Microsoft Word. Gutenberg was their solution, and Gutenberg was supposed to give you a really nice page layout where you're working in blocks. Most people hate it. You can see it's only got 2 stars, and it's officially a WordPress plugin. They were so excited with this last version they came out with and thought everybody'd love it. What's really happened is everybody uninstalls Gutenberg and goes back to the classic editor because they hate it. It did have a good concept, but it just really wasn't that well executed. And so if you want to just add on to the basic editor, you can do things like Tiny MCE, which is a standard editor that just about everybody has. And let's see, we can look for there's one there that's advanced. Well, you can see all the different things you can do. Here's one even for equations. There's one specifically I'm looking for here. Yeah, that's what I wanted. So there's 2 things. One is for your widgets. You want Black Studio Tiny MCE, and that's because normally if you go to edit a widget, it's like I was talking about. I'll show you what widgets are here. So widgets are like spaces on a page. So if I go down here into Appearance and Widgets, I have my main page content, but I also have all these little sidebars that I can put things in. Okay, and this is a theme that I built. So you can see I have a whole bunch of them. Menu above, widget area, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got, and techie people always start with zeros. It's a binary thing, I guess. But it's, you can see I have 4 of them above the menu, 4 above the content, a right sidebar, a left sidebar, below the widget area, menu below. So they're all over the place depending on where I want to put something. It makes it simple. But let's say I go into this right sidebar and I want to put in some text. So I move this little text thing in here, and that's going to create this little text block. But you can see the options to edit are very bad. They're very limited. All I've got is bold, italicize, bullet list, or numbered list, or create a link. What about all the other stuff I might want to do? So instead, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to go back to plugins, add new, and again, we'll go with that Tiny MCE, and I'm going to add this widget. And activate. So now if I go back to Appearance and Widgets, and I go back to that right sidebar, and I decide I wanted to put something in, now instead I use Visual Editor instead of plain text. And here you can just, pick which one you want too. So you can drag it in or do it like this, it doesn't matter. Add widget. So I just did it that way this time, and you can move these around to change the order that you want them to appear on your page. But you can see now I have a much more full option of things that I can do with that editor. And the same thing on a page. So I'm going to go back again and add a new plugin, Tiny MCE. And this time we're going to add Tiny MCE Advanced. Install now. And these are all things I've used a lot before. I wouldn't generally recommend putting in a whole lot of plugins until you know you need them, because they just create bloat on your site and they slow it down. And you should never keep any installed that you're not using, because they're just additional vulnerabilities for potential hackers. But I know from this one, I've used it a lot, and you can look at things like how many users are there and what kind of ratings does it get. This one's obviously pretty good. So I'll activate that. And it's amazing when you think about how many things are free. Like there are literally, well, more than 50,000 plugins. They probably each have hundreds of hours of coding that went into them, and they're all free. So you can leverage thousands and thousands of hours of pretty good coders most of the time, creating all this work that you can then, have the results of and create your business on and not have to pay for it or pay for a private coder, and it's all open source. So let's say that you found an LMS. LMS, by the way, is a learning management system. So suppose you were going to have an online training course and you wanted to have a learning management system. It could include specific lessons. And then in those lessons, you might have videos that people have to watch. And then when they watch the video, they complete a quiz. And then when they complete that quiz, then it allows them to go to the next section and complete the next quiz and section. But suppose it does almost everything you want, but you also want to add a specific feature. Well, if you had to have somebody write that whole LMS, that whole learning management system for you, it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, really, depending on how many hours and how sophisticated it is. But if it's open source, you can, and say you even get a premium one that costs, $50 a year or something like that. You can start with that and then get a coder and say, this is fantastic, except I also want it to be able to do A, B, and C. And they can just write that code and add it in because it's open source. So now you just have to pay a coder for 3 hours of time to make it do what you want it to do, instead of paying for thousands of hours of time to do what's already been done. And so that's one of the nice things about that. But so now we added in this TinyMC Advanced. You can always look at the settings first and see what's there when you add a new plugin. And you can see what they're showing us now, what types of colors and things you want. Lots of options here. You can decide what you want to show anywhere in your editor menu. Here's one, for example, it includes a table. And I'm showing you that for a reason. But you can also see all the other different types of things that you can include. So a full screen button, horizontal lines, any of these you can add into your menu. So suppose I wanted to be able to add a read more button in the middle of my text wherever I want. I can just drag that up here and say there, include that in the menu. And it's there. Okay, and then usually there's a place to save. And now if I go back to pages and add new, you can see I now have a table option. And if I want to move these around too, you can, in the TinyMC itself, you can move them so that the ones you use all the time are in the top row and the ones that you don't use are not. So it just makes it more efficient. And you can see all the different things you can do with that. So now suppose I wanted to add a table here because I wanted to lay something out and make it look nice. So I can say insert table, and let's say I have 4 different images or something that I want to line up. I can say, okay, give me a 2x2 table. So now I have a cell here, a cell here, a cell here, and a cell here. And I want to add some media. No, I'm just, that was from a Pittsburgh Steeler game in Pittsburgh, obviously, last week or a couple weeks ago. And I can add my images. Now, these are going to be all different sizes, so they're going to be a bit messy, but you get the idea. And I guess we only have a few here. And that one is an image. I'll just work with those for now. Now I can control the table height and things like that, either like so, or from in here, I can say table properties and tell it what I want it to be. So let's say we wanted it to be, say, 66% of the width, and height will just leave blank so it can adjust on its own. You can create cell padding and cell spacing and borders and alignment. Let's say center. Okay, so now let's see what that would look like. And I'm just going to call this table demo. And publish. It's saving here. All right, now let's see what that would look like on the front end. So I'm just going to get rid of this extra pages here. I'm going to duplicate that tab and say view page. So you can see that's kind of messy, right? You can't really control the height. There's no gap in here like we might like. They're all squeezed together. And sometimes even if you put the padding and things, it just still doesn't quite look right. A lot of things to deal with when it's a table. And then you have to look at what's called responsiveness too. Whenever somebody goes to visit this on a web or on a phone or a tablet or something of that nature, then it has to look right. So you can usually test that in your window in your browser. So what I'm going to do for now is show you what that would look like. So if I squeeze this down and just close my frame, you can see that doesn't really stack nicely. It's a bit responsive. It gets smaller, but it doesn't go vertical or anything like that, like you might want it to. Now, if we did that with Elementor instead, I could go back in here to, well, we're already on the edit page. So let's leave that open as our front page. We'll go to the back. I'm going to get rid of this whole thing. So I can just come in here and just delete all of that code. And again, see how it wrote the code for me? So back in the old days, when I first started doing websites, you had to type all this in to get that page that we just looked at. You can see how much easier it is now with a visual editor. So I can get rid of that, come back to visual, see there's nothing there. Now, instead of using this editor, I'm going to say edit with Elementor. And this changes everything. So I can go into edit with Elementor, and it'll take a minute to load. Now, I want to warn you, once you edit with Elementor, you can't go back and use the WordPress editor or it'll break what you've done here. But what this does is gives you a nice option to create sections, and you can determine how wide you want those sections to be and what you want to be in each one. And it makes really nice spacing capabilities and things like that. So I can either drag a widget in. So these are all the widgets over here. And widgets are basically just little function blocks, even things like shortcode or SoundCloud, social icons, an accordion drop down, toggles, tabs, just about anything you can imagine. And there are hundreds and hundreds of add-ons for Elementor. And this is what we'll be using for most of our page design when we jump into that. But I wanted to show you this now, so if you're already working on your projects, you can install Elementor. It's completely free, and start using this as your tool instead of a standard editor. The beauty of it is it also still gives you the standard editor feature, but all the great layout stuff. So suppose in this case, instead of just dragging a widget in, I'm going to add a section. When I add that section, it might ask, what do I want it to look like? So let's say in this case, I did want those images to be next to each other. So I can do that. So I just added two sections, and you can see how the spacing is already there for me. Now let's say I wanted to add some images. Now here you can see, and you don't have to remember all this, I just want you to see all the capabilities. Suppose I wanted this to be a full page, all the way across. I could say instead of being boxed, let's make it full width and stretch the section. So now you can see it goes all the way across the top. So if I wanted to have a full page slider at the top, I could do that. And, instead of having two sections here, I might have one. And that's where I might have a big full page, nice image, or even a slideshow. In this case, we were just working with those box images. So I'll reverse this and go back to just what it was. And now instead of squeezing each one of those images into a table where it's dealing with table cells, I can instead go back and say, now what you'd think you'd want to use is image. So I can just drag this in, and then it wants to know what image I want to put there and what size. But something I really like a lot better than that is instead of using the image feature, get rid of that. I've still got my sections there. I like using that text editor after I added Tiny MCE, because now if I do this, I have exactly what my editor is. So now I can use my regular editor. This is the Tiny MCE editor. And I can come in here and say, well, let's get rid of that text. I just want I want my image in there. So now I can say add media. I just grab that same one. There it is. And I can determine if I want it centered or what I want to do with it. And now I can see what size it is. I can edit that too and say, all right, let's look at that. That's 300 by 225, but I could change it if I wanted to. I could customize that and make it any size that I want. And now I want another one over here. So I'll come back in text editor, get rid of the text that I don't really need, insert media, and we'll pick this one. Now this, by the way, is 1920 by 1280, so that's huge. But we're just using the medium size, so they generally match. There it is. Now you can see that this one is taller than this one. So I have some decisions to make. I could either make this one the same size before I even go in. I can make sure that it's the same site height here this way. So if I went in and looked at this and said, all right, this one is medium, I'm going to go custom just to see what it is. So this one's 225 tall. Okay. If I want this one to be the same height, I can now go here, edit here, custom, and say, let's make this one 225 also. And update and center. There it is. So now you can see that they're the same height and they're across from each other. I can align them any way that I want. I can put in a second row above or below. And then when you're done, here are spacers. So suppose, for example, there was something else here and I needed to move one of these. The easiest way to do it would be just drop in a spacer. And you can see how tall that spacer is. I can make that spacer as big or small as I want. And that is a lot easier than trying to screw around with a table and make sure that all the images are aligned all the time. So now if I click update here, and then we can, normally this would be about like that. And we can go back out and look at that page. There it is. So you can see how much nicer that aligned. And of course you can put them closer and have several across. And like I said, you can have a really big full page slideshow or full page images across. And then if you look at how it responds to, like on a smaller screen, see how that's stacked? That's what you want it to do. And that's what a table won't do as well. By the way, I'm the crazy guy on the right, not the one in the middle. But he brought us luck. That was the first game the Steelers won that year, or so far this year until the last one. So that gives you an idea of how that would work. Now, let's see, another question. WordPress and Elementor cannot work on the same page or same site? Partially. Let me explain that a little bit more. So this is WordPress, and Elementor is a WordPress plugin. So it's absolutely made for WordPress. But watch what happens here. So if I say edit this, now you can see here, it wants me to use edit with Elementor because this is already an Elementor page. So if I go here and look at pages too, you'll see this one where it says Elementor at the end. That means we're using Elementor to edit this page. That's what that is. If I went back into edit, now it's again saying edit with Elementor. So I'm going to ignore this. It's not important. But so if I click edit with Elementor, it's going to take me right back to the Elementor editor. Okay, and there we are. Now I'm going to exit here, exit the dashboard. And now let's say I use that WordPress editor again on a page that I've already used Elementor to edit. Elementor adds a lot more code and features and layouts to the back. If I go back to WordPress editor, you can see the warning I get. Please note that you're switching to WordPress default editor. Your current layout, design, and content might break. And it will, most likely. So I'll click continue. And there's what we have now. So now that I'm trying to edit, you can see all that stuff's gone. And it's just showing a couple images in there. And that can get a lot worse if you're, if I were to update now. Now, if we had a ton of stuff in there, they would have broken all of it and just left all the basics in place. But using Elementor, you can do just a heck of a lot more with your design. Almost anything that is you've seen lately that looks like a nice website was done with something like Elementor. And there's a site How much? Oh, we only have a minute left. Well, our next class, we're going to dig in more heavily on design. I think the most important thing between now and then is schedule some one-on-one time with me so that we can get your sites going and moving forward and get everybody on their own path. I want you all to have a great website by the time this class is done, and something completely functional and something that you know how to run and edit so you never have to hire anybody to do that kind of work for you. So just get in touch. There's a few people that aren't attending today. I'm gonna get back in touch with them as well. And we'll just schedule as much one-on-one time as needed and get all your sites up and running. And something, well, I was gonna say, let me know in the notes what kind of functions and things you want, but we already did that in one of the other surveys. And once we have some one-on-one time, we can talk about your business and the types of things that might be useful for that type of a website. And then we'll just start integrating them again one-on-one based on what your needs are. Let's see, any other questions? Tiana, I see a question where. I'm not sure what that refers to. Okay. Um, I'm not seeing a follow-up yet. Right. Okay. You just submitted a follow-up saying we could follow up later. Sounds good. So let's just get some one-on-ones time scheduled with everybody. If you have not even registered your domain yet, but you know which one you want, that's all we need to know. And I can help you one-on-one to set up your domain registration and set up your hosting account. And then as long as you give me access, then I can also set up WordPress and get all of this type of stuff installed on your domain so that you can start moving forward and playing with all of these. And it's really fun. I mean, if you don't have to be online right away, we use something called maintenance, so you can see your maintenance is off. But if I go in here and turn on maintenance, like so, and then I'm going to log out, so we can create all of your sites. Oh, did it turn maintenance back off? And we'll put them in maintenance mode, and nobody's going to be able to see them. Well, I guess it did log me out. So nobody will be able to see the site until we're done with it, and there's nothing you can break. So you'll be able to play around in there and get very comfortable before the site goes online. So with that, I'll say goodnight. Thank you for attending, and I look forward to working with each one of you to create some beautiful, functional, and efficient websites. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.